Mr. President.
Senator from Missouri.
Mr. President, recent developments in Korea should have raised serious concern, and as we've heard over and over again in the Senate today from members of both parties, they have raised serious concerns. This weekend, North Korea launched its latest so-called satellite into orbit. We know that this was nothing but an attempt to conceal their development of ballistic missile programs that would actually check launch capability, not really launching a satellite. On December the 6th, North Korea claims to have tested a hydrogen bomb, which, if that was true, would significantly increase and have advanced its nuclear capabilities. Even if that's not true, they have significant weapons in what everyone in the world would understand to be dangerous and even unstable hands. In October of 2014, the senior U.S. commander on the Korean Peninsula told reporters that North Korea has the capability to put together a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted on a ballistic missile. Now we see them continuing to check that launch and missile capability. They've already tested an atomic nuclear weapon in 2006 and 2009 and in 2013, in all cases in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions and frankly in violation of the agreements that they made in the early part of 2003 and 2004. Nuclear experts have reported that North Korea may currently have as many as 20 nuclear warheads, and that in the capital has the potential to possess as many as 100 warheads within the next 5 years. Combined with what appears to be growing sophistication in their missile technology, they've been seeking a way to represent and really truly possess something that's potentially disastrous in a nuclear way to the United States and certainly to our allies in the region. They have shown great capacity to proliferate nuclear weapons and technology to other dangerous regimes, and we would have every reason, I'm sure, to believe dangerous individuals. The U.S. officials recently connected Iranian officials to North Korea. They specifically mentioned 2 Iranians who, according to the report, quote, have been critical to the development of the 80-ton rocket booster, and both traveled to Pyongyang to work on this. According to reports, Iran might coincidentally conduct a nuclear launch later this month. Now, we see Iran doing what it's doing. We see Korea with the capacity to do what it's doing. Frankly, what we see in both those cases, as well as Russia, economies that are faltering, people that have every reason to wonder about the people in charge of their government. But of course, the more that occurs, the more dangerous a government might be in an unstable country to try to do everything they can to make the most of the idea of enemies that they need to defend themselves against, of people they need to advance against. We also know that they have really significantly increased their cyber capabilities. We continually hear from our people in the intelligence community that the cyber threat is one of the greatest threats we face. We saw North Korea launch out a cyber attack on Sony Pictures in 2014 and did incredible damage in many ways, including just expressing their ability to get disruptively involved in the critical infrastructure of our country in the same way they were able to get involved in the cyber world of one major company. According to the November 2015 report of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, it said North Korea is emerging as a significant actor in cyberspace, with both its military and clandestine operations gaining the ability to conduct cyber operations. That ends that quote that started with North Korea. But when you look at what North Korea is doing with nuclear weapons, their attempt to increase and or exaggerate the potential they have with the kind of weapons they have or the ability they have to develop those weapons. When you look at what North Korea is doing with their cyber activities, we see a continually growing threat there. That's why the bill that's been brought to the floor by Senator Gardner and Senator Corker from their committee, the North Korean Sanctions Policy Enhancement Act, really takes steps by providing the tools necessary to hold North Korea and its enablers accountable for what they do. The bill's overall goal is to peacefully disarm North Korea through mandatory sanctions. That would those sanctions would deprive the regime of the means to build its nuclear and ballistic missiles and advance its malicious cyber activities. Specifically, it mandates sanctions against individuals who have materially contributed to North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile development, to individuals who've engaged in money laundering, the manufacture of counterfeit goods or narcotics trafficking that would benefit those programs, to individuals who've gained in significant activities undermining cybersecurity against the United States or foreign individuals. In addition to these sanctions, the legislation targets areas that would deny North Korea the resources it needs to continue its malicious activities. For example, the bill mandates sanctions on individuals involved in trading minerals and metals that could be part of a nuclear program. This section would send a strong message, certainly to China, China being North Korea's chief diplomatic protector, but also China being North Korea's largest trading partner. The things that could be used as sanctions should surely make China think twice about what they're doing with North Korea, but also think twice about what North Korea is doing with the world. China purports to have significant influence in North Korea. China purports to not want to see these nuclear destabilizing things occur. This bill would be an incentive for China to live up to those claims. It's consistently failed to leverage its political influence or its economic influence up till now. If China's getting serious about North Korea changing its behavior, we'd like to see that happen. And by the way, in a new view of sanctions, there's a waiver in this bill, as there has traditionally been for the President of the United States to have a waiver of these penalties. But this waiver is much stronger from the legislative perspective, in that the President can only use the waiver on a specific basis and has to report, as I understand it, what that basis is. This measure also goes beyond the traditional sanctions, because it calls on the administration and requires the administration to put forth a comprehensive strategy to promote improved implementation and enforcement of how these sanctions would work and what they would do to combat North Korea's cyber activities, to promote and encourage international engagement on North Korea human rights violations, and to report back to Congress what they've found. There can be no doubt that other would-be nuclear regimes are going to be watching this carefully. We see the lack of appreciation for United States commitment in the early weeks and months of the unfortunate Iranian deal. And frankly, the Iranians should and will look back at 2003 and 2004 and wonder why the agreements with North Korea didn't work, and wonder if we're committed to those agreements, and wonder if we still are determined to stop North Korea when we see the kind of activities we see today. And this begins to send that message, but the required implementation, the required reports send that message in more aggressive ways than the Congress and consequently the country have before. Finally, we need to ensure that all U.S. forces deployed in the region are appropriately equipped with the most up-to-date surveillance and counter-ballistic missile platforms. Our regional allies, particularly South Korea and Japan, need to be assured that the United States is committed to both the stability and defense of all our partners and interest in the region. South Korea and Japan should be encouraged to undertake any self-defense measures that are necessary to augment American forces already in the region. North Korea remains a serious threat to peace and stability in the region and in the world. North Korea continues to be a bad example of what happens when the United States makes agreements and isn't prepared to follow through on those agreements. The world is watching. I hope my colleagues will join me in sending a clear message to North Korea, a clear message that their provocations are not acceptable, and that its continuing pursuit of illicit nuclear weapons will not be tolerated. We get a chance, Mr. President, to vote on that issue today. I hope we send a strong message. I hope the administration becomes a stronger partner in this message than the messages that we're failing to send right now to Iran. I think this is an important moment for the country and the world.